Hey folks, Brian Bledsoe again for Red Summit Rangeland Insurance, giving you an update on the long range forecast. Hope you all had a great holiday season and hope you all have been enjoying the moisture that's been fire hosing in from the Pacific over the past month or so. It has definitely been very welcome, even though it's been too much at times. But just to give you an idea about the precipitation anomalies for the past year, you still see some pretty serious deficits out there in the Pacific Northwest and Northern California, despite the fact of all the moisture they've had out there recently. But in general, all that has been coming in about the past 30 to 45 days. So while the past year may look like that, the past month looks like that, where in some places we're seeing as much as 20 inches above liquid in terms of overall moisture in the past 30 days. That is a pretty astounding figure when you think about it. And that puts us in a real good spot to start the water year off on a much better note than where we've been dealing with around here as of late. That doesn't mean drought has been fixed everywhere. We still have some pockets that have been problematic, but in general, we've been seeing things a whole lot better, especially across California, parts of the Pacific Northwest. Obviously in Nevada and Utah, we have a ways to go. Eastern Colorado, eastern New Mexico, still a ways to go right there. But the farther west you go, obviously the pattern has been benefiting those regions the most. The farther east you get, as I said, we still have some problems. You can see some of those darker red shades from northeast Montana, southeast Wyoming, right down the lee side of the Rockies. We still have La Niña in place. This is the current sea surface temperature anomalies, and you still see in that oval area that I have out there in the Central Pacific, all of that blue. But this La Niña is weakening. I thought it peaked back in December, maybe even late November, and it has been weakening, not in a huge sense, but it has been weakening, and that is enough now, if nothing else, a start to try to fix what's been broken largely over the past, say, 2 to 3 years across parts of the West. So a step in the right direction, certainly, with this La Niña starting to go away. In terms of where we are going next, let's look at the sea surface temperature forecast from the Euro seasonal model. And right there, that's February's forecast. You don't see a whole lot of blue on the map. You do see some out there across the central eastern Pacific Ocean. That's where the water temperatures are the coolest right now. But back to the west, we're starting to see those ocean temperatures warm up just a bit. We're also starting to see that in the North Pacific, which is very important in helping cure a lot of the dryness that's been perpetuated across the west for the past few years. So by April, this particular model is showing sea surface temperature anomalies about 2 degrees Celsius above average in that ENSO region. We're also starting to see those warm temperatures reappear across the North Pacific in a broader sense, which again is good toward changing the pattern, because if we continue to do that, that makes it just that much harder for La Nina to resurface eventually. And it makes it that much easier for us to actually go into a potential El Nino episode. Look at that. That warmer than average water expands all the way to the Canadian and US coast. And the warmer than average water down there along the equator only gets warmer and more expansive. And I think that's where we're really starting to flip the script into something we've been talking about now for months, that we're seeing La Nina go away, we'll get to neutral, and then eventually we'll push our way toward an El Nino episode, I think, later on this year. Good news for some, not necessarily for everybody, because remember, while La Nina benefits some folks, and it doesn't benefit others, El Nino does the same thing, many times just in a reverse scenario. So in general, La Nina transitions to El Nino. I think that's still on track. We've got the high probabilities for La Nina over here on the left, because that's where we are right now. We see those rapidly decrease. We go to neutral right there, March, April, May, and then we see the neutral conditions quickly go away, and we see the prospects of El Nino emerging above 45 to 50% by later on this summer. Those are pretty stout statistics at this range. And by that, I'm meaning a lot of times the models won't go all in on something at this range, because they still don't have everything all figured out. But I like that trend in general for a large portion of the West, that we transition away from this La Nina stuff and actually get to something different, which would be good. This is for the next 2 weeks, and that moisture is still coming across most of California and parts of the Pacific Northwest. But again, not everybody. You see there's some dry anomalies up there in Idaho, western Montana, Oregon, and then the farther south you go, just kind of neutral across most of Nevada, and then a little wetter than average for parts of Utah down into southern portions of Arizona. So again, still seeing moisture come in. It's just not benefiting everybody all at once, and that's typically how we roll. The next 3 months, this is February, March, April. This is the Climate Prediction Center forecast, and you can see where the dry anomalies are the most stout across the southern and southwest high plains into the Four Corners area. We obviously have wetter than average conditions across the Mississippi, Ohio Valley, and also across parts of the northern Rockies. And then if we push this to April, May, June, you see kind of the same story, but that dry anomaly shrinks quite a bit there and just encompasses most of Colorado, New Mexico, and far west Texas. And it still stays wetter than average across the eastern Corn Belt there. Iowa, Illinois, Ohio looking in pretty good shape in terms of moisture, and it might even set planting times back just a little bit in terms of the corn plant during that time. The NMME model, I shared this with you guys via email just a little while ago, so I'll kind of breeze through this, but this is what we're looking at. Again, the brown, that's where it's supposed to be drier than average. The green, wetter than average. That's the forecast in the February. If we look at March, you see that dry anomaly kind of shrink completely out of California, and it focuses itself a little bit farther east, parts of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, the western high plains, still wetter than average Pacific Northwest and parts of the northern Rockies. That dry anomaly comes back just a little bit across parts of the west there in April, but nothing terribly significant, at least nothing compared to what we've seen around here as of late. And then the transition continues here. May, we start to see that shrink a little more. And then if we look to June, notice what happens here. Those dry anomalies start to show up across the Pacific Northwest and parts of the northern Rockies. That is typical for El Nino development to see a drier than average summer in those areas up there. And that's something that I think maybe this map in July isn't even picking up on, that if we actually go to El Nino, I would expect those dry anomalies to maybe even be a little bit more widespread in the Pacific Northwest and parts of the northern Rockies. So again, what dries out gets wetter, and what's wetter dries out. That's kind of how we roll with something like this. The Euro seasonal model, kind of the same story here for February. It actually dries out California a little bit it focuses that better moisture a little bit farther to the north up across the Pacific Northwest. Same thing looks doable for March as well. You see where those drier anomalies are. If we look at April, you're going to see kind of the same trend where we're focusing those drier anomalies the farther north and northwest you go, as we're starting to flip that script, and versus farther east, you see some wetter than average conditions showing up along I-35 and eastward across parts of the plains. That's something that we haven't had much to deal with. And that continues to show up even into May. Look at the anomalies there from Oklahoma City down to Dallas, back down towards San Antonio. That's not something we've seen in the spring for the past couple of years. And we're still doing okay up here across parts of the northern Rockies. This would indicate a fairly active storm track during the month of May, and even one that would continue for some parts of the plains, even into June. You see us continuing there. So the fact that we don't have any widespread significant dry areas going on at that time, that's, if nothing else, at least a little bit of good news, and that trend continues even into July. We might have something to worry about there in eastern Colorado, western Kansas, if we can't kick the monsoon up by that time, but it's nothing that's there that could positively reinforce it, I think, at that range. I'm going to talk more about that here in just a moment. In the meantime, here's the IRI model, again focusing the biggest dry anomalies across Arizona, New Mexico, parts of southern Colorado, and far west Texas. That's February, March, and April. For March, or I should say April, May, and June, that dry anomaly shrinks, but is still somewhat prevalent there. Southern Utah, southwest Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, right there in the Four Corners area. So again, it isn't all good. Rarely is it ever, but that's kind of the way we're trending right now. This map right here shows from February through June. Okay, this is historics from February through June, from 1948 to 2020, when the PDO is negative or in a cold phase. These are the precipitation anomalies that coincide with that. So wherever seeing the yellows, the reds, and the oranges, that's where it focuses the worst dry anomalies, if you will. And you see parts of Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona are kind of right there in the crux of that. Farther east, you have dry anomalies, just not as much as you have back there to the west. So my point is while La Nina is going away, until the PDO shifts to a warmer or more positive phase, we still have some things to work on in terms of getting rid of the dryness for good, at least for a while. So, and I was preaching that to my plains customers a little while ago that, they're all amped up that there might be El Nino coming. I'm like, just hold on for a little bit. While it's better than where we've been, don't expect it to cure everything all at once. And I think that's something that they need to at least take to heart a little bit. And I think we all have to, considering the dryness we've dealt with over the past 3 years or so. Anyway, that's my January update, folks. If you have any questions, as always, you feel free to email me. If you don't, I believe we'll be talking again coming up in February, and hopefully we can keep this storm track moving and those moisture frequency going to a higher end too. Have yourself a great weekend, everybody. We'll be chatting with you soon. Bye.